I was always seen as the disappointing daughter, while my sister was the golden child. The truth about her came to light at my wedding. I, 42F, have had a prosperous career as a research professor at a prominent institution, but I have always been the disappointing daughter in my family. I had to tell my tale now, after decades of silence. Since we were small, my younger sister, Ava, 38F, has been the golden child, and their obvious partiality has finally reached a breaking point, shattering our entire family dynamic. The faint sting of comparison permeates my earliest recollections. When I was 8 years old, I recall sitting in my room excitedly reading my scientific books as my mother's voice could be heard downstairs. "Why can't you be more gregarious like your sister?" At the age of 6, Ava had already captured our parents' attention by entertaining their acquaintances in the living room with her theatrical acts. I spent hours disassembling and reassembling old clocks, interested in the mechanics of how things worked, while Ava was performing and receiving all the attention. It was an early pattern. I requested a chemistry set for my 10th birthday, but instead, I received some used novels because books are more practical. 2 months later, Ava expressed interest in taking dance lessons, and our parents unexpectedly found money for private instruction, complete with new ballet shoes and specially designed tutus. That same year, when I sought to join the school science club, Mom groaned about the cost and advised me to concentrate on making friends instead. In those early years, my lone family ally was my Grandma Martha. Her home, which was only a few blocks away, turned into my haven. I would spend weekends with Grandma Martha while my parents took Ava to acting classes and dance performances. Before she retired, she taught science in high school, and she fostered my curiosity in a manner that my parents did not. "Your mind is a gift," she would say as she taught me about the constellations from her backyard or assisted me in doing easy experiments in her kitchen. When we were teenagers, the difference in how we were treated became glaringly apparent. My renewable energy project won the state science fair when I was 14 years old. My parents said they had to take Ava to a crucial audition, so they didn't even go to the ceremony. Our parents gave Ava a lavish celebration that year, inviting the whole extended family, and even hiring a photographer after she was cast in a small role in a local theatrical performance. High school was a haze of scholastic success that was not acknowledged at home. In addition to maintaining a 4.0 GPA, I served as president of the scientific club and editor of the school newspaper. Ava was starring in school plays and dating the football captain. At the same time, her social life and her theater endeavors were the topic of every dinner talk. If my academic achievements were recognized at all, they were just given a cursory nod. I had obtained a full scholarship to study biochemistry at a prominent university by the time my college acceptance letters arrived. When Ava decided she wanted to go to a pricey private institution for performing arts, our parents sold our vacation cabin to pay for her education. My mother's response, rather than one of pride, was, "At least we won't have to worry about your tuition," they remarked. "Ava shows such promise, we can't let her talent go to waste." I pushed myself into my studies during my undergraduate years, finding comfort in the lab where my intelligence and dedication were at last acknowledged. My teachers supported my academic endeavors and encouraged my research, becoming the mentors I had always desired. I received full financing for a prestigious PhD school after graduating with honors. Ava received a callback for a commercial audition, so my parents left early even though they were at my graduation. I effectively and steadily developed my career during my 20s and 30s. I obtained substantial research funds, published widely, and at 40, I was granted tenure, which is an uncommon accomplishment in academia. However, the topic of Ava's most recent acting career or her marriage to Richard, a prosperous real estate developer, always came up during family get-togethers. The conclusion drawn from my molecular biology research achievements was, "Oh, Emily's still doing her science things." When I met David, a researcher in my department, I felt like I had finally found bliss. He seemed to share my enthusiasm for scientific advancement and to comprehend me. Our partnership developed organically as a result of our shared interests, and we worked together on multiple papers. I believed that when he proposed last year, I would finally have a typical milestone that my family could recognize and celebrate. However, things fell apart in the most catastrophic way last week. In order to finish some data for our most recent paper, I stayed late at the lab. I discovered David and Ava sharing a passionate hug on his desk when I went to his office to deliver the results. My fiancé and my married sister were having an affair. Even worse than the heartbreaking betrayal was what transpired afterward. Our parents were immediately worried about Ava. When I told them, my mother begged, "Please don't tell Richard. Think about your sister's marriage. He has a prenup, she'll lose everything if this gets out." In agreement, my father said, "These things happen, Emily. You need to be the bigger person here." I've been the bigger person for 40 years. When they held lavish celebrations for Ava but missed my birthdays, I remained silent. They flew across the nation to attend Ava's community theater performances, but I remained silent when they missed my PhD defense. When they told me I needed to learn how to be financially independent but assisted Ava in purchasing her first home, I swallowed my hurt. Amidst all of this turmoil, an unforeseen event occurred. I met Michael at a university fundraising event 3 weeks ago. He had come to deliver the ideas for our new science facility. He is a 45M architect who creates research facilities. When I discuss my work, Michael listens with true attention, unlike David, who frequently engaged in intellectual competition with me. He poses intelligent queries and discusses his own imaginative technique for creating environments that support scientific advancement. When I called my grandmother Martha last week to tell her about Michael, she detected the shift in my voice. She remarked, "You sound lighter, dear. Tell me about this architect of yours." We spent 2 hours discussing everything, including how Michael's eyes light up when he talks about how art and science intersect in his designs. How he asked me to comment on his early sketches for the new research wing, and how, when we reconnected for coffee, he remembered every detail about my work. There is a clear difference between how my family treated David and how they responded to Michael. Whenever I brought up David at family get-togethers, they would instantly turn the topic to Ava's most recent accomplishments. However, my parents really stopped their normal compliments on Ava's acting career to listen when I brought up Michael. My aunt, during a recent family dinner, naturally, they were able to change it to Ava in a matter of minutes, said, "An architect, huh? Did you know that a well-known architect is married to Ava's yoga class friend? Tell Emily about him, Ava." I recognize the irony of my current circumstance. I've been a successful professional for decades, receiving recognition that my folks hardly notice. My mother is mainly worried about whether I'm getting enough light in the lab. Even though I've published groundbreaking research that may result in new treatments for genetic illnesses. Ava, on the other hand, has alternated between little parts in community theater shows and commercials, and she has been given the attention of an Oscar at every audition. For my work on cellular regeneration, I was awarded the coveted Morrison Grant last month. In my field, it's a huge accomplishment because only 3 researchers are chosen nationwide. My mother said, "That's nice, dear. But did you hear about Ava's latest role?" When I called to tell her the news. In a national ad, she has 3 complete lines. They celebrated Ava landing the commercial part with a family supper later that week. My grant was not mentioned. In fact, I had visited David's office to show him the grant acceptance letter the day I saw him and Ava together. Since we had collaborated on some of the initial research, I assumed he would be pleased. Rather, I discovered him with my sister, clutching the door frame in disbelief as my engagement ring glinted on my finger, and her luxury dress was tied up around her waist. The events that followed seemed to have been a blur. David's rambling justifications about feeling neglected because I spent too much time in the lab, Ava's casual, "Oh, Emily," as she adjusted her clothing, and my parents' anxious calls after I told them, all of which were intended to preserve Ava's marriage and reputation. Nobody ever inquired about my emotional state. As usual, I went to my lab the following day. My haven has always been science, the one field where hard work and intelligence are regarded more highly than flamboyance, and where outcomes are more important than showmanship. I was able to spend a few hours immersed in actual problems with measurable answers as my graduate students talked about their most recent research. However, something had changed within me. For the first time in my life, I felt outraged rather than just wounded by my family's actions. I'm actually furious. It was a powerful, freeing wrath instead of the silent resentment I'd harbored for years. I recognized that I no longer needed their approval after glancing at the grant letter on my desk, the papers I had published, and the students eagerly awaiting my direction. It had been years since I needed it. I had dinner with Michael that night. Since the fundraiser, we had been hanging out informally. But I had been reluctant to divulge too much about my family's circumstances. I felt comfortable telling him everything because of his consistent presence and sincere interest in my opinions. His architect's eyes were analytical and concentrated as I explained 42 years of systematic dismissal and favoritism, and he listened without interjecting. Michael was silent for a while after I had done speaking. Then he said something that gave me a whole new perspective on my predicament. In the field of architecture, we occasionally come across structures that appear flawless on the outside but have serious structural problems that cannot be resolved by cosmetic remodeling. In these situations, the most considerate thing we can do is admit that the structure is no longer safe and construct a new one. I've tried being the ideal daughter, the smart researcher, the understanding sister. I've minimized my accomplishments to avoid overshadowing Ava and downplayed them to spare my parents the cognitive dissonance of having to acknowledge them while maintaining their narrative of Ava as the special one. He's right. I've spent my entire life trying to fix a fundamentally flawed family structure. Grandma Martha, who is 92 years old and still as sharp as ever, always sees right through the dynamics of our family. Last night, I had supper with her. Your parents have spent so much time making Ava the star of their show that they've forgotten there are other stories worth telling, she added, swirling her tea with a poise that belies her advanced age. But you, my dear, have been writing your own story all along. Perhaps it's time to stop letting them edit it. She continued after taking my hand. I am writing this now because I have made up my mind. Michael and I have been talking about getting married, not engaged yet, but headed that way, and when the time comes, I will not have a large family wedding, nor will I invite my parents or Ava, who will inevitably try to make it about her in some way. Instead, I will have a small celebration with the people who have truly supported me, including Grandma Martha, my Aunt Linda, my coworkers who appreciate my work, and Michael's family, who have shown me more sincere interest in 3 weeks than my own parents have in 42 years. I let Ava's attempt to call me go to voicemail yesterday, and she left a message saying that I'm overreacting to the situation with David and that she wanted to explain. She concluded by reminding me that she is my only sister and that families should forgive each other, which I deleted without answering. For the first time in my life, I'm putting my happiness ahead of my family's meticulously crafted story, choosing to be surrounded by people who appreciate me for who I am rather than who they wish me to be, and celebrating my accomplishments without downplaying them to stroke someone else's pride. But here's the thing, I'm a scientist, and I deal in observable facts. And the facts are that they broke up this family long ago, piece by piece, every time they chose to devalue one daughter in order to elevate the other. I know there will be fallout when my parents realize I'm serious about cutting contact. They'll probably tell everyone that I'm being dramatic, that I'm jealous of Ava's success, and that I'm destroying the family. I have my research, my students, my grants, and now, possibly, a partner who sees me clearly and values what he sees. So here I am at 42. Finally prepared to do the most important experiment of my life, seeing who I can be without the weight of their expectations and disappointments. Perhaps that's more than enough. Perhaps that's everything. First update, 3 months have passed since my previous post, and a lot has transpired. Let's start with the good news. Michael and I are officially engaged. He proposed last weekend while we were going over the final blueprints for the new research center. He had concealed the ring in a blueprint tube, and it was the ideal combination of thoughtful, subtle, and wholly us. Let me give you a little background so you can see how far I've come. After the David and Ava disaster, I threw myself into the new research facility project, and working with Michael became my haven, as my family called me nonstop to ask me to forgive Ava and keep the peace. Michael and I spent long hours talking about how to create the ideal laboratory spaces. The interaction itself was a huge contrast to my experience with David, who made the proposal at a department meeting, making it all about getting attention from the public. With David, everything was a competition: who had more publications, whose research was more innovative. Michael, however, made it personal and significant. My Aunt Linda, who was sincerely delighted for us, sent the bad news to my parents, and within hours, My phone was overflowing with messages. "Why didn't you tell us you were seeing someone serious?" was Mom's initial reaction, rather than congratulations. "Ava may have compared you to her friend's architect spouse." The guilt-tripping then began. "We should have been the first to know, we, your parents. It didn't matter that they hadn't inquired about my life once in the 3 months since the David incident. They were too preoccupied with helping Ava cope with the anxiety of possibly being discovered having another affair." Mom called in tears, claiming that I was denying Ava her position as maid of honor and family tradition. When I reminded her that Ava wasn't even invited, she fell silent for a full minute before giving a speech about forgiveness and family ties. That's when the real drama began. Richard has been aloof ever since David, my ex-fiancé, began working as a personal trainer at his company's fitness center. Yes, you read correctly. David quit academia to pursue a career in personal training. It seems that he and Ava have been seeing each other at the gym. Richard isn't aware of this yet, but people are talking about it. During this trying time, Ava has been phoning me every day and left messages about how she needs her big sister. In contrast, my research has thrived amidst all of this turmoil. Last week, we were awarded further funding for our cellular regeneration study, and the grant committee particularly mentioned the creative lab design Michael and I created together as a contributing reason. Grandma Martha was thrilled when I contacted her to tell her the news. "That's my girl," she remarked proudly. His mother, a retired judge who truly knows the complexities of the situation, said me something that truly spoke to me. "Family isn't about sharing DNA. It's about sharing respect." Michael's family has been incredible throughout this entire ordeal. One of my best friends is his sister, a professor of literature. Michael and I had our first real date in the botanical gardens, where he had asked me to discuss the greenhouse specifications for the new research facility. We ended up talking for hours about everything from architectural history to photosynthesis. Which is why the wedding planning has been surprisingly calm, mainly because we are keeping it small and meaningful. Grandma Martha, who has been more of a parent to me than my own parents ever were, is the only member of my immediate family who will be there when Michael and I meet with her tomorrow to show her our wedding preparations. And to be honest, it seems perfect. Michael joins me for some sessions, and his insights as an architect often provide interesting perspectives. Emotional boundaries are like load-bearing walls. They're not about keeping people out. They're about maintaining structural integrity. He said in our most recent session, "I've started going to a therapist to process all of this. And she's helping me understand that it's okay to set boundaries, even with family. For now, I'm concentrating on my research, my future spouse, and finally putting myself first. I'll provide another update once we have a clear wedding date. For the first time in my life, I feel appreciated and seen for who I am, not because I'm someone's sister or daughter." Second update. 2 more months have passed since my last update, and I wish I could report that things have improved with my family. The wedding is in 3 weeks, and instead of being a happy period of preparation, my parents and Ava have caused yet another family crisis. We meticulously organized everything, a small ceremony in the botanical gardens followed by a private reception. I made it clear to my parents that Ava was not invited, and the guests were chosen to include my grandmother Martha, a few close relatives who have always been there for me, my coworkers, and Michael's family. My Aunt Linda called to warn me after overhearing Ava boasting about the surprise she was planning for my wedding, and it turned out that she had already purchased a dress that, in her own words, will show everyone what a real star looks like. I learned yesterday that my parents had not only informed Ava about the wedding details but had actively encouraged her to attend. When I confronted my parents, they pretended that they were helping me. "We couldn't let you make the mistake of excluding your only sister," Mom said, adding, "She's got a beautiful speech about sisterly forgiveness. It will make the wedding so much more meaningful." This was the most frustrating part, they responded. "But she's going through such a difficult time with Richard. He's been so cold to her lately, and she needs her family's support." I had to reiterate that someone who had an affair with my ex-fiancé is not allowed to speak about forgiveness at my wedding, with his exact words. "The only dramatic performance happening at our wedding will be our vows." Michael, who has been tremendously supportive throughout this whole ordeal, quickly phoned our wedding venue to set up extra security after I informed him of Ava's planned intrusion. The irony that Ava's marriage to Richard is disintegrating at the same time that I'm starting a new life with Michael is not lost on me. Richard has finally begun to inquire about her frequent gym visits with David, and my Aunt Linda claims that there have been some tense arguments at their home. Nevertheless, in my parents' eyes, this makes Ava the victim, who requires assistance, rather than the mastermind behind her own demise. In addition to the gym, my colleague noticed David and Ava eating lunch together at a cafe close to the university, looking very intimate. I brought this up to my mother in the hopes that she would finally notice the pattern, but she dismissed it as Ava being a supportive friend to someone going through a career change. My parents tried a new strategy this week. Dad, who has never shown up at my lab without warning in my academic career, tried to persuade me that keeping Ava out would create a rift that can never be healed. The rift was created when you consistently chose her over me. It was widened when you dismissed her betrayal of my trust, I said, looking at him standing there. This man who had never taken an interest in my work. Don't worry about Ava, Grandma Martha, bless her, assured me. I'll be stationed at the entrance. She wouldn't dare try to get past me. Grandma Martha, who is 92 years old and still sharp as a tack and doesn't take foolish people well, offered to run interference on the wedding day. My research lab has become my haven during all of this chaos. The clarity of data analysis and the precision of scientific work are a welcome contrast to the emotional manipulation I'm dealing with at home. Michael's brother, who works in private security, has also arranged for a few colleagues to be present, disguised as guests. I've hired additional security for the wedding, though it pains me that I have to protect my own wedding from my sister's intrusion. The venue has been given photos of Ava and strict instructions not to allow her entry. 3 weeks before the wedding, I should be thrilled about marrying the amazing man who supports my career, knows my boundaries, and loves me for who I am. But instead, I'm planning how to prevent my own sister from ruining my wedding day. My graduate students have noticed my increased presence in the lab, but they've been incredibly supportive. I will provide another update following the wedding. Regardless of Ava's presence, I am getting married to Michael. I will no longer allow my family's drama to overshadow my happiness. Third update. Yesterday was the wedding, and while I wish I could say everything went well, my family did manage to pull off one last dramatic moment. But this time, something unexpected happened. The truth was revealed, and the fallout was both painful and freeing. Ava, as usual, wore a white dress that looked more appropriate for a red carpet event than a morning garden wedding. And our parents showed up at the botanical gardens despite all our precautions. My mother, sobbing uncontrollably about how cruel it was to exclude them, while my father tried to reason with the security team. When Grandma Martha and Michael's sister came, I was in the bridal suite with them, and as I saw the chaos at the door through the window, something inside of me finally broke. It all came to a head when I stepped out to the entrance, still wearing my wedding dress. After years of being the nice daughter, being silent as they denigrated me, I watched them justify Ava's actions. Emily, how could you do this to me? I'm your sister. I came here to support you, to show you how much I love you, Ava said as she launched into her performance. When she saw Richard's car arrive into the parking lot, she stopped talking. Yes, it was Richard, her husband, who had reportedly followed her there. A scene from a movie played out when Richard confronted Ava about her relationship with David. Despite her best efforts to deny it, David called her phone, which was on speaker, and everyone heard him ask whether she would still be coming over later. My mother then turned to me and exclaimed, "Look what you've done! If you had just invited your sister properly, none of this would have happened." Rather than confronting Ava about her actions, the last straw was that I answered in a surprisingly composed voice. "No, Mom. These are her decisions, not mine. She chose to have an affair with my fiancé while she was married, to attend my wedding without being invited, in white, and to keep seeing David behind Richard's back. 3 years ago, I found Ava and my then fiancé David together in his office. I began turning to our guests when I told our parents. They never once asked how I was feeling. They were only concerned with protecting Ava's marriage because Richard has a prenuptial agreement." Richard's expression changed from hurt to angry. "A prenup? Is that why you've been pretending everything's fine?" he asked. Ava, who revealed everything through mascara and tears, confessed that the affair with David had been going on before he and I were engaged, and she had pursued him out of boredom and because she couldn't stand that, for once, I had something she didn't. My parents, who were still apparently more worried about Ava's failing marriage than their other daughter's wedding day, followed as Richard turned and left without saying another word. And Ava ran after him, while yelling his name. Following their departure, an extraordinary event occurred. The remaining guests, which included my coworkers, Michael's family, Grandma Martha, and the relatives who had consistently witnessed Ava's deception, surrounded us in a protective circle. Michael's mother, a retired judge, then asked, "Now shall we have a wedding?" Michael's vows moved me to tears. He pledged to love me and to always see me, to value my mind as much as my heart, and to create a life based on mutual respect and understanding. The ceremony was lovely, with the gardens in full bloom and the morning sun casting a natural spotlight through the trees. My Aunt Linda told me today that Richard is divorcing Ava, and the prenuptial agreement means she will receive nothing. My parents are inconsolable, trying to find out how to support her, but for the first time in my life, I don't feel compelled to join in the drama. In between hiking excursions and wine tastings, Michael and I will be visiting some of the most cutting-edge research facilities in the world on our 2-week honeymoon in New Zealand, which is the ideal fusion of science and leisure, much like us. Some of the most significant experiments are the ones where everything goes wrong, but you end up discovering something revolutionary. Grandma Martha observed when she called to see how I was doing this morning. As always, she is correct. Amid all of that craziness, I found my own strength. I'm not sure what the future holds for my family, but I'm concentrating on my new life with Michael, my research, and the family we've chosen, one based on genuine love and respect for one another rather than duty and rivalry. I have a feeling my parents will eventually try to get in touch with me, most likely to ask me to help Ava get back on her feet. It's time to begin my honeymoon with my amazing spouse, who loves me because of my commitment to science, not because of it. This will be my last update. Cheers to fresh starts, unambiguous boundaries, and, at last, the freedom to be who I truly am. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you. My 12-year-old daughter left me for her rich stepfather after losing her mother and being kicked out by her stepfather. She returns broke at 22. My ex-wife, then 41, female, and I, then 45, male, split up 12 years ago. She found solace in the company of a wealthy man. Sorry, there's no better way to put it. She was a stay-at-home wife and mother who had little interest in working or earning money. She wanted to stay at home and take care of the house and our daughter. I never forced my daughter to work after she was born, even though my finances were tight. I was working 2 jobs and earning enough money to eat well. However, my salary could not afford the luxury lifestyle she desired. I will not go into detail regarding my relationship with my ex. This piece is about Laura. Details regarding my ex-wife may be covered in another post. When Laura was 10, my ex-wife admitted that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man. She moved out on the same day that we filed for divorce. We became co-parents to Laura because I had 2 jobs and she didn't. We decided that I'd have Laura on weekends. I formed a strong bond with Laura. We have some fantastic adventure trips together. Even though the divorce was traumatic, spending time with her made me feel so much better. As time passed, I noticed Laura was delaying our meetings. Previously, every Friday, I looked forward to her email explaining what she planned to do over the weekend. However, the email's substance eventually changed to, "Sorry, I can't make it this week." Weekend? We're going skiing or we have other fancy sports or SL trips with stepfather. I initially ignored this, believing her stepfather was simply trying to keep her happy and that I should not be jealous. I eventually concluded Laura didn't want to see me as regularly. Our weekly meetings became bi-monthly, then monthly, only one day of the weekend. I saw she was not enjoying our time together as much as she used to. When it became clear that she was purposefully avoiding me, I challenged her. I tried to explain that I was doing everything I could to keep her happy, even overextending myself financially. Despite this, she continued to forsake our weekends together. She began lying, claiming she had schoolwork or projects on weekends, when in fact she was going out with her stepfather. Her excuses sounded real at times, but they were mostly made up. Whatever little time we had together, she would always complain about how much better it was going out with her stepfather, since he doesn't look at the price tag before ordering anything. Even on trips I accompanied her on, she would prefer to spend time with her stepfather. She began grumbling about tiny inconveniences that previously did not disturb her. But she never stopped talking about the new PlayStation 5 or bike her stepfather gave her, or the expensive stuff her mother purchased. I felt she was too young to grasp that showering someone with material possessions is not love. The problem got worse when she ignored me for almost 3 months. Despite several calls and texts, I received no response. Desperate, I called my lawyer and told him everything. He informed me I could sue my ex-wife for alienating Lara, but Lara was 12 at the time. And my lawyer advised that if she admitted in court that she no longer wanted to spend time with me, it may exacerbate the situation. Lara could say she needed more money to live up to her lifestyle, which could imply increased child support. Yes, I was already paying child support, despite the fact that her wealthy stepfather provided so much for her. I dropped the idea of suing my ex for custody. There was no purpose. My attorney advised we have a formal out-of-court conversation with them. It would help me understand what they wanted. I agreed to go this way, and my lawyer wrote them a letter with extensive allegations. He said that we desired an out-of-court settlement. I had a strange sensation that my ex-wife would refuse to talk, since she had enough money and time to burn in a court action. To my astonishment, she agreed to discuss and resolve this matter in front of the attorney. My ex-wife's husband attended the conference, as did my ex-wife and Lara. They both swore they were beyond this and had no idea if Lara was ghosting me. They admitted they had no part to play in it and stood aside, allowing Lara to speak for herself. Lara then delivered the most devastating blow of my life. She demanded that I relinquish my parental rights. That was 10 years ago, yet I still remember the frightening event vividly. I was dead silent for I'm not sure how long. My lawyer pressed me for a response, but I just stared at everyone. What do I say? When I looked at my ex-wife, her lips twisted into a smile as if she knew what was going to happen. I took Lara's hand and murmured, "Baby, I hope you understand what you're saying. Giving away my parental rights would mean you could no longer call me Dad. You would no longer be my daughter." She shook off my hand, stared straight in my eyes, and said, "Yeah, that's what I want." I was astounded. I ran out of words to explain the implications of her decision. My lawyer attempted to explain the legal repercussions, such as property concerns and other issues. But she refused to change her decision. She looked at her stepfather and questioned, "Once he disowns me, you'll be able to adopt me as your daughter, right?" He nodded with wide eyes and replied, "Certainly, darling." Words cannot express the bitterness I felt at that moment. My world was destroyed, to say the least. I lost my sense of purpose in life. After my wife of 15 years cheated on me, Lara was the one bright spot in my life. She was the one I looked forward to after working 2 jobs. I didn't date anyone for 2 years after my divorce. I didn't have the time and didn't want to. I wanted to give Lara my complete love and attention. This is what I received in return. She wanted to get rid of me. My state was so pitiful that I couldn't think clearly. My lawyer borrowed some time to respond to them. I'm sure my ex and her husband slept well that night after seeing me in such a vulnerable position. My lawyer drove me home. After he went, I cried like a baby for hours in my empty house. My heart was filled with a wide range of emotions. I contacted my folks and informed them of Lara's desire. They were completely terrified and hurried over to comfort me. My parents, particularly my mother, were really close to Lara. She had been caring for her for over a year when my wife needed surgery and was forced to stay in bed. During that time, my mother took care of both Lara and my ex-wife. Mom gave it all. But Lara insisted that I give up my parental rights. She passionately wanted to be her stepfather's daughter. He had informed her that he couldn't adopt her unless I relinquished my parental rights. I asked my lawyer what my choices were. He suggested we could sue them for manipulating Lara, but because she was 12, it would be difficult to show she was being manipulated. Besides, they had the money to pursue a long court action, whereas I did not. Plus, what's the sense of battling when the person I'm fighting for has already decided on their side? It was a lost battle. I had no choice but to swallow the bitter pill and give up my fatherly rights. I spent the next week wrapped up in my bed. I left my second job. Who do I work for now? I lost all motivation to get up in the morning and go to work. I took so many absences from my full-time job and struggled so hard that I was eventually dismissed. I moved to a different town, slept at a subway station, and walked around like a crazy person for days. I gradually got out of it, found a new job, went to the gym, and enrolled in treatment. It took me around 2 years to recover. I didn't date, but I did go on a lot of solitary trips as a form of treatment. During one of these visits, I met my current wife, Brianna. She had a 5-year-old daughter named Emma. After a while of dating, we moved in together. Brianna introduced me to Emma for the first time, and I broke down. She reminded me of Lara. I strongly wanted Emma to address me as Dad, but I held back. I did not want to damage myself again. I had a healthy but distant relationship with Emma. On her 12th birthday, Emma requested me to adopt her. I felt so overwhelmed. I now have 2 kids, Emma and Amy, a 3-year-old toddler with my second wife. I believe I've provided enough context on my circumstance. Fast forward to a week ago. I was returning from work when I noticed a familiar face smiling at me. As I approached, I saw it was none other than Lara. I felt shivers, as if I had seen a ghost. She was taller, slimmer, and much more attractive, but it was easy to recognize her. She ran up to me and hugged me, saying, "Dad, I'm your daughter, Lara. I finally found you." I gazed at her with lifeless eyes and replied, "I have 2 daughters, but you're not one of them." Before she could say anything, I began walking away. She followed me, but I turned around and yelled, "Quit following me, or I'll report you." I did not see her after that. The next day, she arrived at my residence. As soon as I opened the door, she exclaimed, "I apologize. I know you're angry with me, but please hear me out. Mom has died, and Dad, stepfather, has brought his mistress home. He doesn't love me as much as he did when Mom was living. He's cut me off financially, and says I need to start earning my own money. When I pestered him, he threatened to disown me." I listened to her outburst and said, with a straight face, "So what?" She began pleading with me for another opportunity. I screamed at her to leave and slammed the door in her face. She then went to my mother and apologized. She was able to persuade my mother with her emotions, and now she wants me to reunite with Lara for the sake of our family. The anguish she caused me is preventing me from reconciling with her. Am I an **** hole? Update 1. Some of you inquired about my ex-wife, wondering whether she was a gold digger, if she manipulated Lara, or if it was my fault. So here's a quick background on my ex-wife. We dated for 2 years before we married. She worked at a neighborhood bar as a waitress while we were dating. I was a regular there, which is how we first met. She was living with a coworker. I worked one full-time job and lived in a studio apartment. That's when I acquired another job, saved more money, and purchased a house to accommodate her. We were married, and she quit her work for the first 6 to 7 years of our marriage. She was pleased and content with my salary. But then she began moaning about how her friends' husbands earned more money. She would even tell me that instead of settling for me, she should have waited longer to find a richer husband. It was offensive, and we would have fights. Of course, I couldn't just stand there and take the obscenities she hurled at me. Eventually, our connection became chilly and distant. One day, she revealed that she had been sleeping with a wealthy man and would be going out to live with him. I didn't beg her to stay, but I did warn her that these wealthy men regard women like her as toys. They play with them and then discard them when they're finished. She said she didn't rush things this time, and she'd been seeing him for 2 years. She trusted him enough to live with him. After that, I didn't have anything to say. I kept quiet and sucked it up. Some of you pointed out that Lara was just 12 when she requested me to disavow her, and that I should have battled for her. You are correct that she was a juvenile when all of this occurred, and I do not deny that she was emotionally and financially misled. When she became 18, she had the option of contacting me, but she chose not to. She's now 22 and is just seeking out since her stepfather cut her off financially. Someone questioned how my ex-wife died. I didn't ask Lara about it, but she informed my mother that her mother died from a serious illness. Lara also had a liver condition and needed surgery as a baby. The problem is that Lara is exploiting my mother's emotions in order to assist her in reconciling with me. Instead of discussing it over the phone, I went to see my mother and discovered that Lara had fed her sob stories to win her back. She stated she was homeless, had no employment or money, and had been living on the streets since her stepfather kicked her out. My mother requested I meet her, and I accepted for her sake. Mom contacted Lara, and she arrived within an hour. I probed her aggressively, and all of the facts came out. It turns out that her mother and stepfather spoiled her so much that she never finished high school. She was too busy vacationing and dining with them to think about schooling or school. I'm not sure what that man was thinking by indulging her in this way. I'm not sure what her mom was thinking when she allowed this to happen. Lara insisted that everything she did and said, including the parental rights issue and the ghosting, was part of her mother's plan to embarrass me. I asked her why her mother would do such a thing. She said it was because I didn't make enough to purchase her mom high-end clothing and accessories, which had embarrassed her in front of her friends. Lara claimed her mother devised the scheme to shame and humiliate me in front of her new husband. Listening to this was really distressing because it brought back all of the traumatic experiences I had worked so hard to forget. I told Lara that the past was done, her mother was gone. So what did she want from me now? She asked me to accept her as my daughter again. When I questioned what would happen after that, she quickly said, "It means I would be your daughter and you would have my back." I answered, "Okay, I will accept you as my daughter, but all you will get from me is love. I'm planning to give Emma and Amy my property, insurance money, and savings, but I shall cherish you as my eldest daughter. Will that work for you?" She froze. After stammering for a time, she responded, "Yeah, we can discuss money later. You are not going to make a will now, are you?" I said, "Yes." Emma and Amy are already identified as beneficiaries in my insurance and savings accounts. I also bought a house in the new city and gave it to my second wife, Brianna. I won't change any of that for you. If you're good with that, bring me the document I signed giving up my parental rights, and I'll have my lawyer prepare a new one to overturn it. She answered, "Yeah, sure," but remained mute for the rest of the conversation. My mother offered her food, but she rejected it, citing a pressing matter. 2 weeks have gone by and she has yet to turn up. I pointed this out to my mother, adding that it was all about money. Lara backed off after I informed her I wasn't going to give her any. What a useless piece of work she is. Update 2. I warned you it was all about money, and it certainly is. Lara returned to my mother's house 2 weeks ago, despite the fact that we had last spoken 4 months ago. She looked awful, with red puffy eyes covered in dark rings, and rashes all over her body, possibly caused by swallowing something she was sensitive to. She was crying and screaming for assistance. She demanded money from my mother. Lara explained that she had been living with a friend since her stepfather disowned her, but that friend had now thrown her out as well. She claimed to have sold the majority of her items to buy food in recent months, but she now had no money or possessions. Mom questioned why she hadn't acquired a job. Lara claimed she dropped out of school and no one would hire her. Mom recommended communicating with a friend who manages a bakery to see if she could get Lara a job as a cleaner or something similar. After all, there are many careers that do not require a high school graduation. Lara remained mute and wailed, asking my mother for money. Mom gave her some packaged meals and $100. She also questioned why Lara had not brought the paperwork to challenge the disownment. Lara stated that it was at her stepfather's place and that she would retrieve it next time. She accepted the money and food, then left. Mom didn't tell me about this visit at first because she assumed I'd be upset with her. 3 days earlier, Lara returned to my mother's house with the same sob story. Mom asked what she did with the money, and Lara responded that she spent it on groceries. When Mom inquired about the job, Lara did not provide a direct answer this time. Mom refused to give her any more money, claiming she didn't have any to spare and no more food. She simply handed her a loaf of bread. As Lara was preparing to leave, Mom inquired whether she had changed her mind about being my daughter. Lara responded, "What is the sense of having him as my father if he isn't going to give me any money?" He has given everything to his beggar stepchild. Mom was taken aback by her statements and chased her out of the house, threatening her not to return. Mom quickly called to tell me about both trips. I did feel upset with her for assisting Lara the first time, and I warned Mom to be cautious while answering the door at night. Based on Mom's description of Lara's appearance, it appears that she is engaged with bad company and may pose a threat to Mom, especially since she is living alone following Dad's death last year. We want to seek a restraining order against Lara in case she returns and causes trouble again. Today, I went to my mom's residence. I went outside to see whether Lara was around, but I couldn't find her. I will be staying here for a week. I don't know what to do, but I'm sad about her. If what she said about my ex-wife is correct, my ex went too far in her attempts to disgrace me, destroying her own daughter's life. If Lara is lying about it, she has already paid the price for her nasty behavior. By the way, someone remarked on my previous post that everyone has the freedom to make their own decisions, and Lara wasn't bad for choosing her stepfather over me. She was simply on the wrong side. I suppose that's true. She made a decision 10 years ago, and she has to live with the consequences for the rest of her life. Thank you for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so and hit the notification bell to stay updated with more shocking real-life stories happening around you.